Arch rivals Ethiopia and Eritrea traded blame for a border battle in which significant casualties were reported in one of the worst clashes since the end of a 1998-2000 border war. The Ethiopian government said the battle, which began on Sunday, was one of the most serious in recent years. The fighting had reportedly calmed on Monday. Ethiopia's Information Minister Getachew Reda described the clashes in the Tirana area as an Eritrean initiative. Earlier, the Eritrean government said that Ethiopia had unleashed the attack. A peace deal in 2000 ended the country's two-year border war, but it hasn't been fully implemented. Just 2 months after Libya's unity government moved to the Libyan capital, Tripoli, troops aligned to the new government are making significant advances in its fight against the Islamic State. The operation against ISIS started a month ago, and already the troops have captured about 80% of Sirte, an ISIS stronghold. Sirte is the most significant Islamic State stronghold outside Iraq and Syria.
Forces loyal to Libya's unity government continue to make advances in the Islamic State's stronghold. The militias have been locked in heavy clashes with the IS in efforts to regain the city of Sirte. During the 3 weeks long battle, Libya's forces have been advancing much quicker than expected. The troops that recently threw their support behind the unity government have captured about 80% of Sirte and over the weekend pushed deeper into the city. The battle has not been an easy one, as the troops faced a fierce resistance, including a series of suicide car bombs. At least one person was killed and 4 others wounded in the blasts. The loss of Sirte will deal a major setback for IS, which has also been losing territory in Syria and Iraq. The militant group took over Sirte last year, exploiting Libya's turmoil to gain a foothold in the oil-rich country. Officials in the capital are hoping that a victory in Sirte will narrow the political divide still plaguing the country. After more than 2 years under 2 rival governments that effectively split the country, Libya's unity government moved into the capital Tripoli in March. But it has had difficulty asserting its authority across the troubled country. In May, the new government won the support of militias from the city of Misrata, which is between Tripoli and Sirte, to launch an offensive against Islamic State in Sirte. The forces aim to take control of the city before the end of the holy month of Ramadan, which began on the 6th of June. Bureau Report, ANN7.
To take us further, I'm now joined on the phone line by Ibrahim Dean, researcher from the Afro-Middle East Center. A very good evening to you, sir, and thank you so much for joining us on Africa Tonight.
Good evening, Caroline. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Now, Sirte is the most significant, ISIS stronghold outside Iraq and Syria. As I've mentioned earlier, what does this mean for Libya?
I mean, it's very interesting to note that, the forces that took over or are taking over Sirte currently are, forces loyal to the unity government, which, seem to be allied to the Libya Dawn militia as well, but also that there's warplane support and aerial support from other Libyan forces in the Libyan National Army, which kind of shows that, this does mean that, this could very well be a platform to build a more political process afterward, provided, correct moves are taken by the unity government. However, in saying so, the forces of General Khalifa Haftar have been out of this battle and haven't actually participated at all. And this, is a bit concerning because, this may just mean that ISIS previously has united all these forces against it, and once ISIS goes or is contained, what then happens? Do they return to the civil war, or does this, as this may be, can it actually result in the political process going forward? Because this is the only way long term to try and stabilize the country.
You spoke about concerns. There's a concern that civilians could be caught in the crossfire. How much of a threat is this to the Islamic State?
I mean, I think one is civilians. Most of Sirte's 80,000 population have already escaped. But But in saying so, there's always going to be a threat to civilians, especially because right now it's urban warfare. It's warfare in the middle of streets, and so that's an issue. And as we have seen before, hasn't been shy or hasn't been scared or hasn't moved away from using civilians to protect the group itself. I think were ISIS to be contained from Sirte, I think that they'd lose tremendously, and that the threat of ISIS specifically in Libya, which is its second most strategic province, would almost be gone.
Last month, the United States, carried out airstrikes on Islamic State camps in western Libya, and French special forces are operating the eastern city of Benghazi. What else is being done?
There's been support or actions or interference in the country from United States, but also Britain, Italy especially, and so we would hope that the taking over of Sirte would actually lead to a slowing down or declining of this international interference. But by the way the international community acted in the ouster of Gaddafi, it's very unlikely that they're just going to allow the situation to move and Libyans to actually sort out their problems. They want to find a solution that hopefully, in their opinion, would contain Libya or stabilize Libya, but also benefit these Western countries. And so it is quite, an interesting and a poignant moment right now, because Sirte has been taken over largely, very easily. And so there's no real need for more international interference in the country. And, this we would see now after Sirte is taken over, whether or not, the international community or the motives become more clearer.
Ibrahim, you're saying there's no need for any, extra aid. However, there were plans that were afoot to send 6,000, troops from a number of NATO countries. So are you saying that's no longer going to happen?
I think the NATO troops would be deployed, but that the NATO wants to deploy these troops, especially the US previously or a few days ago have said that the arms embargo needs to be lifted. But if we're looking at how quickly Sirte is being overcome, we can see that ISIS doesn't have much of a foothold in Libya, and that NATO coming in would actually just result in NATO backing one side in the civil war, because after ISIS goes, it's either going to be a platform to build a political solution, but it just as easily could result in the same conflict that happened before between the East and the West, and NATO would then be taking sides in this conflict, and basically it would just make the conflict more intractable.
Thank you so much to Ibrahim Aden from the Afro Middle East Center.
Thanks for having me.